welcome. It's been a strange year. We, of course, hoped we would be doing this as part of our annual LitFest evening in person, but we're going to try something new to ensure we can celebrate all of our contest winners and share that with you. We're recording it so that people who are not able to attend hopefully will be able to check it out in the future. It's time to get down to the business of celebrating our authors and recognizing what NOW is doing in the community for our contests and for writers in the Northwest and around the world. I'd like to introduce to you, to bring some welcoming words, our NOW president, Jodine Wiley.
Good evening and welcome to our very first Zoom event for the members of NOW, the contest entrants, and their supporters. We're so happy to have you join us. My name is Jodine Wiley and I'm the president of NOW. I took this position about a year ago to the day, and what a year it's been. I'm thrilled that we've been able to institute new activities and programs such as the peer-to-peer program and Writin' Wednesday, and to continue to provide fantastic events such as the many workshops, readings, Christmas gathering, e-writer program, and of course the NOW Writing Contest. I wish that we could be gathering at a wonderful LitFest event, but am grateful that technology allows us to gather in spirit. It came as a surprise to all of us that COVID-19 quite literally stopped the world in its tracks. We were preparing to deliver a reading event with 10 by 10 performers, a workshop with H. Layton Dixon on the indie road to publishing, and we were only a handful of weeks away from Louise Els joining us in Thunder Bay and in the region to share some wisdom on the short story. Then everything changed. Most of us have been housebound due to this virus, with social gatherings and the ability to be in public spaces together entirely shut down. I'm thankful for all of the essential workers who have kept our country operational while we wait for some answer to this crisis. In the meanwhile, I hope you have had the chance to write, to share your thoughts, concerns, worries, hopes, and visions of the future with the page before you. As writers, we're gifted with an outlet to process this circumstance in a creative way. We're actively making a game plan for the future, though what that looks like, we're not sure. While we can't predict what the year ahead will bring or what social gatherings will be possible, we do hope to maintain as many of our key events as possible. We're considering other avenues to bring events to you and ways in sharing and writing together. We'll be collaborating and planning as the months progress with hopes to restart in the fall. So please follow along to our social media and check your inboxes to see what we're planning. We're about to begin announcing the winning names and entries from our writing contest this year. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank the people that have made NOW possible during our 2019-2020 year. I'd like to thank Liz Pacholko, the Vice President, Charles Campbell, the Treasurer, and Tessa Hargraves, our Secretary. I'd like to thank Graham Strong, Doug Dyzik, and Siobhan Farrell, who have been members at large throughout the year. And I would like to both thank and welcome Phil Bulla and Clayton Bai, who have recently joined the board. Much appreciation goes to Don Parsons, who has done an amazing job as our administrator, and to Megan Stockwell for overseeing a wonderful writing contest this year. We are also blessed to have a number of volunteers. Thank you to each of you for helping to bring NOW events to life this year, and my complete thanks belongs to you. Now I'd like to introduce you to our newest board member, Clayton Bai. Welcome, Clayton.
Thank you, Jodine. I bring a strong background in writing to this position, having published or ghostwritten a total of 67 books, hundreds of lesson projects, and just as many reviews. I'm also a small publisher and have worked as an editor-in-chief at a couple of large blogs, namely The Deepening and The Write Room. I'm hoping I can be of assistance to all of you in your own work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clayton, and thank you as well to Jodine. So, as has been said, we really wish that we could have done an in-person event, but there is, we realize, one big benefit of holding this virtual celebration. This Zoom session will allow our members and contest entrants from all over North America and the world to attend and hear the results potentially in real time. Now this year, we had 5 categories with over 100 entries. For each of our categories, a screener selected the top 6 entries, which were then passed on to our judges above, and they then went through those 6 and did a final ranking. The judges also provided some comments about each of the winning entries. So now let's recognize those contests, entrants, and the winning entries. So our first category of the evening is short fiction. The category is sponsored by the Thunder Bay Writers Guild. Each entry into the short fiction category is a complete piece of literary fiction between 2,000 and 3,500 words. Our judge for short fiction is Madeleine Tien. She's the author of 4 books, including Dogs at the Perimeter and a story collection, Simple Recipes. Her most recent novel, Do Not Say We Have Nothing, was shortlisted for the 2016 Man Booker Prize, the Women's Prize for Fiction, and the Folio Prize, and won the 2016 Scotiabank Giller Prize and the Governor General's Literary Award for Fiction. The novel was named a New York Times Critics Book of 2016 and longlisted for a Carnegie Medal. Madeleine's books have been translated into 25 languages, and her essays and stories have appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, Brick, Frieze, Granta, and elsewhere. She lives in Montreal and is a professor of English at the City University of New York. Madeleine selected for the 3rd place winner the story Island by Mo Markham. Madeleine said that Island feels like a secret, slipping one way and then another as it tries to put words to something fragile and raw. The love between the narrator and her beloved Evie, and the all too brief escape that allows them to exist together. I loved this tenderness and its beauty, said Madeleine. The 2nd place story in the fiction category is You Must Stay Put by Tina Petrick. You Must Stay Put creates a world of interdimensional trauma, intergenerational joy, and the stream of potential that animates the soupy ocean of different lives. Leaping from quantum computers to the world of a single soul, the story makes your head spin. It is ingenious, a real pleasure, says Madeleine. Coming in 1st place in short fiction is Heartblood by John Pringle. Heartblood tells the story of a lifelong hunt where predator and prey are more vibration than substance, and where a sun must leave sleeping forms in the summer air. Madeleine comments further that the story pivots in surprising ways, seeking revelation and rest. The language is wonderful, arresting, vivid images live powerfully in the mind's eye. And now I'd like to invite our contest coordinator, Megan, to read a brief excerpt from Heartblood.
Mrs. Campbell drove Calvin to school after he'd refused to walk to the rural bus stop. They were late, so she accompanied him to his classroom and knocked. Mr. Burr, a spectacled man with shaky hands and a quavering voice, listened to her explanation. Calvin found his seat near the back of the 3rd row. His classmates' eyes followed him in. The boy behind him, Willie Franklin, finger flicked Calvin's earlobe after he sat down, and Calvin nearly turned, but checked himself. He'd wait until recess. From his seat, he could hear Mr. Burr murmuring, "It's good what you're doing, Mrs. Campbell, all things considered." And Calvin knew everyone else could hear these words too. It made his skin crawl.
Thank you, Megan, for your hard work both times.
Thanks.
We don't promise that the technology will work every time, but we get better at it every category, let me assure you. Which brings us to our 2nd category, which tonight is creative nonfiction, which can include memoir or personal essay and is a piece between 1,500 and 3,000 words. Russell Smith is our judge for creative nonfiction. Russell has been a freelance journalist and cultural commentator since 1989, publishing in Details, the New York Review of Books, the Globe and Mail, Toronto Life, Now, Flair, Toro, Sharp, and many other publications. He writes a regular weekly column on the arts for the Globe and Mail. He's an expert on language and was the host of the popular CBC Radio 1 program And Sometimes Why, about words and language, for 2 seasons. Russell Smith's fiction is largely contemporary in setting and satirical in tone. It's been nominated for several major awards, including the Giller Prize, the Governor General's Award, the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize, the Trillium Prize, among others. He has twice won the National Magazine Award for fiction. In third place in this category is Threadbare Smile by Cindy Matthews. Russell comments that this is a story told in the style of fiction, a third-person narration from the point of view of a son's attempting to take a curmudgeonly cancer-ridden father for a last duck hunting expedition. The old man's physical disintegration is described in painfully honest detail, and the outing brings up the broken lives the family has lived and the father's relentless lack of affection for the son. Yet it ends with a reluctant reconciliation, a poignant conclusion to both a hunt and a life. In second place, Routine Traffic Stop by Marlene Elder. Routine Traffic Stop describes a violent police raid on the house of a mother and daughter on the night of a thunderstorm. Our judge comments that the story cleverly parallels this physical storm with the thunderstorm of anger, indignation, and helplessness the mother feels brewing inside her at this unnecessary and heavy-handed intrusion. The police, looking for drugs, go away empty-handed and leaving a sense of violation and vulnerability and a new insight into social justice. And in first place is Chasing Bubbles by Susan Eldridge Vautour. Russell tells us that Chasing Bubbles narrates, in moving yet precise language, a family's discovery that their newborn baby has Down syndrome, a mother's move from grief to happiness, and the growing realization that her son is a source of pride and elation. It concludes with the line, "Love, like bubbling champagne, lifts you high above the place where you once stood," a powerful insight into how setback can become strength. Megan will now read an excerpt from Chasing Bubbles.
It was Heritage Day weekend in North Bay, but we pretended that all the ruckus was in celebration of our perfect child. I felt so content as I held Jason and Scott held me, and the sky lit up in explosions of color. The fireworks climaxed and the sky went black for a while before our eyes adjusted, allowing the stars to appear, mundane sparklers in the heavens. Scott and I became impatient to go home with our new baby. After all, I felt unbelievably good, and Jason had already proven his nursing prowess. The boy was not about to starve. We were Ava's second delivery that day, and I was sure that she wanted to go home, so why the delay? The bottle of champagne was on ice at home, just waiting.
Thank you, Megan. And also thank you to Gail Linkletter of G-Link Counseling, our sponsor for the second category of the evening. The third category, The third category this evening is poetry. It is sponsored by the Lakehead University Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. Each entry in this category was to consist of 3 to 5 poems in any style or theme, with a combined count of between 50 and 100 lines. Our judge for this category is Gwen Benaway. Gwen is a trans girl of Anishinaabe and Métis descent. She's published 3 collections of poetry, Ceremonies for the Dead, Passage, and Holy Wild, and was the editor for an anthology of fantasy short stories, Maiden, Mother, and Crone, Fantastical Trans Femmes. She is the Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry winner. Her writing has been critically acclaimed and widely published in Canada. She was a finalist for the Dane Ogilvie Prize for LGBTQ writers for the Writers' Trust of Canada, the Lambda Literary Award for Trans Poetry, and the National Magazine Award and Digital Publishing Awards for her personal essay, A Body Like a Home. Her 4th collection of poetry, Aperture, is forthcoming from Book Hug in spring 2020. She is currently editing a book of creative nonfiction, Trans Girl in Love, forthcoming from Strange Light, also in 2020. She lives in Toronto, Ontario, is a PhD student at the U of T in the Women and Gender Studies Institute. In third place is Mexican Skies by Siobhan Farrell. Gwen describes this collection as delicate and carefully woven, These poems bring quiet reflection to narrative and offer tiny, well-crafted windows into meaning. In second place, the collection Homeless Series by Debbie Metzler. This collection is striking and evocative, the judge writes. These poems bring together sound, image, and emotional power to capture the reader's attention. And in first place, 3 Poems for Persephone by Kim Fonner. Gwen describes 3 poems for Persephone as lyrical and precise. These poems have a careful attention to detail and poetic resonance that carefully blends image with metaphor. And Megan will now read a piece from one of the 3 poems for Persephone.
Okay. I'm reading Before. Before it, though, you were yourself, sovereign and spirited. Afterwards, a pawn to be played, a maiden made mistress without consent. And these seasons will turn as hands on a clock, and these stories will be told as echoes in pale memory. And these words will remind us that you were once your own, sovereign and spirited, a girl on a backyard swing, bare feet, warmed in the sun.
Thank you, Megan. Our 4th category tonight is our specialized category, or what we select each year as a themed category different from our others. This year, the theme of this category is Arts Review. The category this year has been sponsored by Michael Sabota. We thank him for his support in this category. Each entry in the Art Review category is to be a complete review of a piece of art, whether it be film, book, album, etc., between 1,200 and 1,500 words. The judge for this category is Stephen W. Beattie, the reviews editor at Quill and Choir magazine in Toronto. Stephen's writing has appeared in the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, the Walrus, Canadian Notes and Queries, and elsewhere. He maintains the literary website, The Shakespearean Rag. In third place, The Jane Austen Project by Jennifer Sharp. Stephen says of the writer, this critic does a solid job of approaching a very difficult text, a genre mashup of 18th century Regency romance and speculative fiction. The reviewer displays a knowledge of Austen's work and its importance and does a good job situating it in the context of a time travel novel under consideration. This review also does a good job of bringing present-day concerns, sexism, the credibility gap between men and women in STEM professions, without being heavy-handed. In second place, Still I Rise by Sue Blott. The judge found the review thorough and cogent, providing specific details about how Rivera's paintings function in concert with Angelou's poetry. The language the critic uses is precise and active and works to draw the reader into the writing. The piece provides a reader with an understanding of what the book is and how it is laid out, and uses concrete evidence to back up assertions. There is also acknowledgement of the disconnect in the hyper-masculine painter, one notably married to an equally well-regarded Mexican feminist painter, being paired with an iconic work of a Black feminist liberation poet. In first place in this category, Blood on the Tracks by John Pringle. Stephen comments that the review does it all. It has a strong individual voice that is clearly knowledgeable about the subject and is willing to admit that not all of a beloved songwriter's output is equally strong. It delves deep into the work in question, providing specific descriptions of how the songs operate, both at individual units and as a cohesive whole. For people familiar with Dylan's music, it provides depth and nuance. For those unfamiliar with the music, it provides sufficient context that a reader is not lost. The language is strong and direct, and the writing is appreciative without being sentimental. A very strong work of criticism. Megan will now read an excerpt from Blood on the Tracks.
I lived for music in the 1960s. My favorite artist by far was Bob Dylan. He cast a spell with poetic wordplay, a raucous harmonica, his voice a nasal snarl demanding an end to segregation and war. There was backhanded humor and delightful phrasing, his scruffy appearance and shift-shaping persona, and even his love of songs pulled me in. It seemed everything this young man created was touched with genius. He defied labels and social expectations, always one step ahead, whether he used his folk guitar or his electric. He made a country album while the flower children gathered at Woodstock. His songs inspired my own ambitions to become a writer, an artist, a freedom seeker, a traveler. It seemed he could do no wrong.
Thank you very much, Megan. We've come to the final category for the evening, and it is our category which very much talks to now, because it is the Bill McDonald Prize for Prose, which is sponsored by Kathy McDonald in memory of Bill. This category is very much close to us because it requires that a Northwestern Ontario setting be central to the work. Northwestern Ontario is considered the districts of Thunder Bay, Rainy River, and Kenora. Each year, a category is either fiction or creative nonfiction, and this year the category was a piece of nonfiction between 1,500 and 3,000 words. Amy Jones is our judge for this category. Along with being a former Thunder Bay resident, Amy is the author of the 2009 short fiction collection What Boys Like, which won the Metcalf Rook Award and was shortlisted for the Relit Award. In 2016, she released the national best-selling novel We're All in This Together, which won the Northern Lit Award and was a finalist for the 2017 Leacock Medal for Humor, and also was one of the Globe and Mail's best books for 2016. She is a past winner of the CBC Short Story Prize and a finalist for the Bronwyn Wallace Award, and her short fiction has been anthologized in Best Canadian Stories and the Journey Prize Stories. Her second novel, Every Little Piece of Me, was published by McClellan and Stewart in June of 2019. In third place, in the Bill McDonald Prize for Creative Nonfiction, The Boreal Spirit by John Pringle. Amy writes that, with humor and tenderness, the narrator unpacks the relationship with the spiritual, with nature, and with their family in this captivating and engaging story. It is both a testament to the resiliency of the land and a compelling journey towards spiritual acceptance. The second place story in this category is Granny's Garden by Debbie Metzler. Our judge comments that the roots, both metaphorical and physical, run deep in this story, which is part loving tribute to a grandmother and part family history. Hewn with stalks and stems and held together with love and memory, the story demonstrates the author's uncommon depth of understanding of the ties that bind us, and how knowing our past can help move us forward into the future. And our first place story is Kenogamisus River Moose Hunt 1981 by James Simpson. A classic outdoor adventure story with an unlikely antagonist. This is the story of two men whose moose hunting journey is thwarted by the weather. Amy found the story to be unsentimental, richly detailed, and shot through with a clear love and respect for the land. The narrative completely immerses the reader in the setting of the boreal forest and Northwestern Ontario landscape, guided by a narrator with a distinct voice and unique perspective. And Megan will now read an excerpt.
The air was smooth as I pulled back on the controls, and my Cessna 150 took off at Geraldton Airport. It was late October, mid-morning, and the temperature was just above freezing. For the past several weeks, I'd had to scrape frost off my car's windshield in the morning before I drove to work. Today was sunny and cloudless, like almost every day for the past 3 months. I couldn't remember the last time it had rained. Dave and I were headed northeast about 40 miles to check out the Kenogamisus River. He thought we should go moose hunting there when the season opened in a few weeks. Today, we'd be looking for open areas adjacent to the river, plus any obstructions that would prevent us from paddling Dave's canoe upstream where the river entered the dam section of the Kenogami River.
Thank you again, Megan. those are the 5 categories. I want to congratulate all of the winners and also to everybody who's entered or been part of the contest process. It's an important opportunity for people to put work to the market, so to speak, to be able to have very professional and recognized authors from around Canada participate and see the work coming out of our organization and out of our contest. The 2021 contest will be opening next January, and since we're all sitting at home, hopefully everybody will be taking some time to prepare in advance of that, as opposed to me, who usually writes at the end of the deadline. And now, to help close up, I'd like to invite our president, Jodine Wiley, to make a few more comments.
Congratulations to all of the winners of this year's writing contest. We commend your efforts, your skill, and your creativity. It's a pleasure to hear all of your names being announced and the wonderful comments that the judges have provided on your work. To those winners, Now will be in contact with you in regards to your prize. So stay tuned, watch your mailbox. To all those in attendance, we wish you well and all the best in writing this summer. Have a pleasant remainder of your evening, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Jodine, and thanks again to everybody for attending this first ever attempt at a virtual event for us. We do hope to be offering you more events, both virtual and traditional, as we move through the COVID-19 events that we're dealing with. And the website will be posted with winners in early June. This video, as I said at the front end, will be posted as well. And remember that our June magazine will feature the contest's winning entries. So thanks again for participating. Thanks for coming out tonight. Tell your friends, and remember that even though we may be locked away in our basements, isn't that where really writers want to be most of the time anyway? Thanks again, and good evening.